Alrighty, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Whether you're in the West Coast, East Coast, North or South Americas, from EU to Asia, Africa, and Australia. We didn't forget about you. So from cloud to on-prem, we're here to help you all over the globe on how to build your AI-driven defense with ServiceNow today. Because it's called ServiceNow, not Service Later. So a little bit about who we are as a company. We are GlideFast, a top elite partner of ServiceNow. Couple of awards, both nationally and globally, specializing in ServiceNow with the goal and succession of that goal in being one of the most certified implementation specialists of ServiceNow with over 5,000 plus certs and over 600 plus expert consultants. We have our validated practice badges in a multitude of application suites, but for today's webinar, wanted to highlight our security and risk validated COE badges because we live, breathe, and eat ServiceNow with just our 10-year anniversary recently passed, and we continuously aiming to expand and broaden our expertise across the globe. And when I say we specialize in ServiceNow, I mean we do specialize in all that is ServiceNow 365 with expertise in all major application suites from SPM to CRM to HRSD, and giving a sneak peek to our SecOps and GRC IRM chops with our speakers today. So whether you need advisory services, full project implementation teams, portal design, training, or even a bucket of hours to help give some horsepower for that ever-growing backlog, we cover it all in relation to ServiceNow. Speaking today, you'll have myself, SecOps and IRM architect and instructor, along with Eric Jones, our ServiceNow SecOps architect and overall security guru, and John Gillespie, our certified technical architect and service delivery manager, leading our GRC practice. Quick agenda. Just went through introductions on GlideFast and who's speaking today. Then we'll go into John's AI Control Tower segment, followed by Eric Jones and his Unified Security Exposure Management. And I'll round us off towards the end on some of our partners and our journey to SOAR Plus, and finishing off with Q&A, of course. Now, a couple of data points and numbers to kick us off before getting too deep into the weeds conversationally. AI is powerful. Shocking, I know. Rapid consumer use and expectations came out the gate sprinting, and for good reasons, because consumers see the ease of use, benefits, and efficiency of use. But, and this is a very important but, business is slower to adopt, creating that expectation gap. Right. So 53% of enterprises saying that AI presents greater ethical risks than emerging technologies. So there might need to be some sort of guardrails, right? Some sort of risk assessments of these AI systems, some sort of governance, because with great AI power comes great AI responsibility. Points for any Spider-Man fans here. So that comes into our next top track. And before I hand it over to John, for those of you who are aware of ServiceNow's AI Control Tower, here at GlideFast, we do have a fast track offering for implementing an MVP, a minimal viable product, so to speak. So please reach out to us after this webinar and we can discuss further on your needs. So with that being said, John, the floor is yours.
Hey, thanks, David. So first of all, yes, we're talking about AI Control Tower, which is more part of IRM than it is security operations. It's not one that we readily relate to SecOps. It's not a feature that you use directly to triage vulnerabilities or decide on which playbook to use for a specific security incident. Rather, it's a governance management and oversight tool that most relate only to the use of external AI tools. We should, however, think of it in the same way for the internal AI capabilities that help analysts address vulnerabilities and security incidents in ServiceNow. AI Control Tower can really help by ensuring that those underlying AI models that you rely on are trustworthy, effective, and compliant. As we implement AI inside SecOps to help identify the appropriate playbooks for a security incident or identify the duplicate VITs in vulnerability response, we need to be able to rely on those AI-driven decisions, and AI Control Tower can provide the trust and structure that's needed for that confidence. Let's talk about the 4 basic AI capabilities. If we can go to the next slide here, These are basically designed to help automate and enhance the core parts of an analyst's job, whether it's security incident or vulnerability response, allowing them to manage a much larger and more complex threat landscape. We can basically think of this as AI-driven hyper-efficient response. Concepts like risk-based prioritization and intelligent automation and remediation, and correlation and duplication and threat intelligence enrichment, all through predictive intelligence and AI agents, can fundamentally shift your role from manual data triage and documentation to a more strategic threat investigation and rapid resolution. They help to compress the time spent on repetitive tasks and enrich those decision-making capabilities. Now, with risk-based prioritization, AI can continually analyze asset value and exploit the availability of threat intelligence and vulnerability severity to give you a more of a real-time context-aware risk score for every vulnerability that's coming in. You end up no longer sorting and you start securing. Instead of manually calculating risk based on static CVSS scores, you can immediately focus on that 1% that pose the greatest business risk, like the critical vulnerability on a revenue generating server. With intelligent automation and remediation, your AI agents can automatically create and assign remediation tasks to the correct IT teams based on your CI data, the team capacity, and your predefined playbooks. And they can also orchestrate the remediation process end to end. You become more of an orchestrator and not a taskmaster. Your routine patch management becomes a hands-off process, basically freeing you to focus on the complex, the high risk, or those zero-day issues. For example, asset vulnerability exposure. That agentic workflow can automatically identify and track zero-day exposures based on incoming vulnerability data. In correlation and deduplication, when we think of all the data coming in from our scanning tools, AI agents can process and consolidate massive amounts of data from various scanning tools and remove redundant alerts, basically linking vulnerabilities to correct CIs, marking duplications, etc. And you can eliminate the noise. You're no longer wasting time investigating the same issue over and over again, reported by multiple scanners. You increase the accuracy of your vulnerability data, and you can dramatically reduce your backlog. And with threat intelligence enrichment, the AI agents can automatically correlate new vulnerabilities with live threat intelligence, such as the CISA known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, getting that CISA Kev data related to those vulnerabilities even faster, providing instant context on whether a vulnerability is actively being exploited in the wild. You gain that immediate data-driven insight, and your analysis shifts from, is this severe, to, is this a current threat that requires emergency action? Now, as we look at this and we shift from AI to AI Control Tower, we can leverage AI Control Tower to basically log the use of AI internally, providing several benefits. Now, we think of the visibility into an inventory of AI use as external, but our internal use should be documented as well. We need to basically provide a single centralized view of every AI model or agent being used, such as the model for risk scoring or the agent for task assignment. By doing this, you establish trust. You can demonstrate that AI-driven prioritization is using approved, governed models. And this is crucial when demanding resources or change requests from IT and leadership. Risk and compliance monitoring allows IRM to automatically map the AI decisions to internal policies and standards and to external regulations like the EU's AI Act or the NIST AI RMF. It can flag potential issues like model drift or bias. You manage compliance, you reduce liability, you can ensure that AI is prioritizing vulnerabilities and security incidents in an ethical and regulatory compliant manner. protecting the business from future audits or ethical pitfalls. And finally, performance and impact measurement provide the key metrics for AI performance, tracking that, for example, measuring how much faster a vulnerability is remediated because of an AI-driven assignment. You prove the team's value, you justify AI investment, you gain hard data to show leadership the efficiency gains, allowing you to advocate for more resources or strategic initiatives. By leveraging both AI and AI control tower capabilities, you can transform from a high volume triage resource to a more strategic security risk manager dedicated to your security posture. You can focus on true risk. Instead of spending 80% of your time shifting through thousands of medium severity tickets, AI can let you focus 80% of your time on analyzing those few truly business critical risks that require custom built security solutions. You can finally act as a business partner, moving beyond security jargon, using AI's contextual data to communicate vulnerability risk in business terms, explaining potential financial and operational loss to executives, which is going to become a key role for senior security personnel. By understanding how AI control tower is configured, how you can monitor these AI agents, both in vulnerability response and security incident response, you can become that internal subject matter expert who can govern, tune, and optimize these systems, giving you critical information and moving you from the daily mundane into a truly beneficial security posture. So we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about the security side of this and moving into the security realm. And I'm going to turn it over to Eric Jones, our SecOps COE lead, to talk about this.
Thank you, John. John kind of touches on a lot of the functional use of measuring, managing, and controlling your risk, or at least getting visibility into risk of AI use in your environment. But then also kind of that segue into how do you benefit from AI in your platform and in your security response protocols. I'm going to take a moment and really highlight one key feature that sort of gives a real big benefit to what ServiceNow is doing, and how ServiceNow is adopting AI use to benefit your security programs. And that is the Unified Security Exposure Management offering that's coming out soon. Bear in mind a little bit of a forward-looking conversation and statement here, but go out and take a look if you're not familiar with the ServiceNow storefront, looking at that Innovation Lab offering of USEM. When we talk about the vulnerability management space, right, we're seeing this trend almost, or shift, to where traditional vulnerability management lived, owned, or was controlled by your cybersecurity space. Now we're starting to see a lot of shift, right, into risk. And that makes sense. When we talk about vulnerability, we talk about preventing, right, or hopefully catching those weaknesses, misconfigurations, et cetera, before malicious actors know about it and or exploit it, right? USEM here brings AI forward, right? It's an offering from ServiceNow's product suite that's very AI first, and it's going to bring about a unified workspace or interface for all the things vulnerability, bringing in that cohesive kind of cross-domain function of risk, technical folks, remediators, et cetera, but giving them an agentic or conversational AI way to interact. So with this space, along with some of the AI agents, AI conversational agentic perspectives, the analysts that ultimately are working your assigned vulnerabilities are going to have a very quick way to see exposure-based prioritization, asset view. It's no longer about just a CVSS score or a flat score function, right? It's a lot of factors in that risk. Right along with, is AI a part of this, right? Is this going to be exploited faster? So being able to bring forward the exposure-based vulnerability prioritization and everything shifts the team into much more priority based and much more of a mature view, rather than that scan, fix, find, right? We see a lot of organizations that do a scan, fix, find. Bringing forward exposure management with AI allows us to shift right into what you see in this security exposure management tool set. So understanding that view is coming up and becomes a very important use of seeing AI efficiency. Let's kind of dive into the reasons why this is the shift that we're getting into. And as we can see in these reports and quotes and kind of pull forwards from these, right? Several industry reports and surveys, the use of AI tools rises, right? We see that. We see 74% of these security context respondents. Not only we're seeing the AI cyber threats increase, but we're also seeing a use case here of the respondents having a fear. We talked about, and Liam has talked about that gap, right? Agentic AI on my phone, people are using it. I as a bad actor could use that to come against your organization. But 60% of respondents are fearing that the organizations aren't prepared to defend or ready to use. And then we get down into that idea as well, where we also still see, even today, AI, agentic AI, generative AI, all of those terms, functions, and tools are out there. But we still see 43% of organizations that are over 10 security tools on average. I would argue that a lot of these folks are, a lot of your analysts would say there's a lot more tools in their security response and preventative tool chains, right? Keep in mind all of this, right? As your organization looks to use AI tools, so do the bad actors. And that's what we see with this, right? Rapid increase in attack surface by introducing these tools, the need to be defensive against it, but then also seeing tool spread really leads us into like this security fatigue. And that becomes a very, very increasing concern for your organization, right? But shifting gears from the negative, when we look at these reports, we see the negative of, look, AI's out there, bad actors are going to start using it. Analysts are fearful of or concerned. We do see an uptrend in the positivity or the reward across industry of using AI in your security and vulnerability tool chains. So yes, we get noise. Yes, we get weakness. And yes, we get faster attack methodology. But we can see here that organizations that implement and use in a responsible, governed manner that are using AI in that tool chain and response chain are seeing savings. Not only are we seeing somewhere around a 10% increase in the use, but because of that representative 10%, we're seeing almost 2 million in cost reduction, be it by time to respond, time to identify, or simply when the attack or breach does occur, if we talk reactive, we also can see faster response and faster remediation because of that AI tool chain. So it is very clear here, right, that we have risk, but we have reward. And what we really want to dive in today is using this reward in your response chain. So with this powerful security arsenal, right, let's take a look at a few of those pieces. But before we do that, let's talk about the ultimate number that most security organizations are going to be looking at, right? How long does it take? And this is the big number you see in a lot of reports and marketing. That number still seems alarming, right? 258 days average time across industries to identify and contain a breach. But what's key in honing in on this is the use of AI in those response chains saw that this number is a historic 7-year low. And that's interesting, right? The year prior was 277 days, which doesn't seem like a big decrease. But if we talk about the cost per day of a malicious actor in your environment, that data leak, the shutdown, the business loss that we talk about, right? Seeing this number trend downward and in a very good way, alarmingly, a 7-year low of 258 days, right? Really shows that benefit. Those organizations out there that saw that 1.8 million savings, right, in adopting and using AI speak to this. So, with all of this in mind, how do we take this, and as a ServiceNow customer, how do we leverage this and all of this concept of risk and reward to keep this number trending downward? We do this, and this is a big deal, right? And this is where I personally have a lot of excitement for this USIM tool set. We see a shift from traditional find, fix, find, respond, fix, find, prioritize, fix into an exposure culture. AI is going to bring forward a lot of noise. We're going to see faster exploitation if we're not already seeing it. We're going to see a lot of that concern, right? So we're going to see an uptick in noise. Even with that, shifting our teams into getting a viewpoint of our findings of weakness and our vulnerabilities that are truly worrisome, right? If there's already mitigating controls in place, if there's already other things in place, this is an isolated system. I don't care as much about it. Even if there is a higher risk to this because of a CVSS scoring metric, it's easy to exploit, etc. When we shift into looking at a holistic view of our environment, our exposure, and our footprint, we're able to scope these things that matter, the assets, the business processes that are a part of or running or respond, or that asset is responsible for. We start to really know true exposure. And that brings us beyond that traditional individual view of the vulnerability or asset on it, shifting into a more effective, faster, kind of cross-team remediation and supporting that shift that we see in the industry where we're folding in risk. We're influencing our organizational's risk posture because of what we're doing in vulnerability response, allowing for a much more strategically aligned process. And then that really brings us into what is USIM, right? We talk about the risk, the reward, the why, and what it does. Across your ServiceNow security operations space, if we really focus on that left-hand side, proactive, preventative, right? USIM brings that exposure culture or concept forward, unifying all of these suites across the left: infrastructure, application, cloud. If you're in a more regulated industry, OT, even getting into some of the security posture control functionality that we have. And it brings it down into a single workspace rather than having to jump into each of these. It's a very foundational unification of all of those, that then also you'll start to see fold outward when we saw that quote what on the prior slide, where the teams today really need we need a way to continually prioritize, right, as opposed to just dealing. Giving that team that single view is very important and crucial. But it also applies the AI functionality where now that we have that singular architecture and view, we're able to see all of those things much quicker. A great example of that is a vulnerability that is spread across an application-based vulnerability, your SAST and DAST type scanners, all the way to it impacts a network interface, right? So we talk the technical host and the application vulnerability, along with the risk prioritization. When we look at that vulnerability and we look at the total package of that through the unified view, we see a different viewpoint of that risk to that. If we had looked at just one or just the other, it looks different. So our teams, our analysts, our risk analysts, our vulnerability remediators now get a very wholesome and holistic view that moves us from single view, find, rate, prioritize, and fix into something more akin to which one do I care about and what matters most in all of that noise. We go back to that reference of 258 days to find, fix, and remediate, right? Those are those ones that breached. But what about the ones that you don't know about, right? Maybe we don't really care. Some of these can truly live in our environment for hundreds upon hundreds of days and never matter. But the ones that need to be remediated and resolved are brought forward in this unified view. With that in mind, right, this being one of the biggest feature sets that we see in proactive security, scanning, bringing them in, but then also giving a unified view across all those types and noises of vulnerabilities. And also fronting that with those conversational AI interactions. Hey, I have this asset. Tell me about all the vulnerabilities that are on it and tell me why I care is a much easier conversation for your analysts to have than to looking at a form and field and priority. But that's only proactive. What about those times when we do need to respond to an event, right? We have an event that has occurred, whether it's a breach or not, that we really need to actually reactively deal with. So with that, David is actually going to take a look at a couple of the feature sets and everything and talk us through some of the SOAR plus AI functionality that we have today.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. So before diving in too deep into that plus AI piece, just wanted to talk a little bit about what a SOAR is, right? Security Orchestration Automation and Response, especially for those kind of new to the program. So wanted to really hone in that it's more than just a bunch of security tools or different weapons in your arsenal, so to speak, but it's more of a program and a process, right? Our everlasting stack of playbooks just continuously being enhanced and innovated over time. Because in the security realm, we don't just stop at our SOC groups, but rather we leverage them along with a multitude of groups in our organization to use as a stepping stone into future advancements, collaborating with machine learning, artificial intelligence technology, to identify specific patterns, forecasts, data-driven decisions, enriching our data even more so we become more proactive even in a reactive instance, right? So we might be combining your SIMs, your EDRs, and threat intelligence with orchestration, automation, and being as responsive in a timely manner, right? So just really wanted to go at that high level of what a SOAR really represents. And as we've been discussing throughout this whole webinar, just a unification and governance along with AI, right? So kind of moving into some of the most recent and newest features with ServiceNow's Now Assist for security incident response, which is why we call it SOAR Plus, right? We're adding that AI piece. So in generating a handover reports using generative AI. And now why this matters for future SOC groups. It really summarizes critical incident details, whether it's impact, affected assets, containment actions, next steps, references, and more, right? So essentially, those Now Assist agents will aid your SOC analysts in taking away their tedious and mundane tasks, right? Simplifying their day-to-day operations to focus on that bigger picture. Because really, in practice, what once took 20 minutes or 30 minutes or multitude of days, as Eric and John mentioned prior, is really going to be carefully documented with what happened in seconds, right? So without sacrificing any detail, and that's the most critical part. So this is making handovers become more reliable, structured, and even actionable, no matter who is writing them. And as we continue on the topic of unifying a multitude of applications and processes and partnerships, here's a very high-level design of how ServiceNow, GlideFast can work with a partner like Tanium, ingesting endpoint vulnerability data into ServiceNow, prioritizations, driving remediations, understanding what vulnerabilities that need patching, and scheduling said tasks with patch orchestration, right? So once bring that in, and this could be from a multitude of scanners as well. It's not always just one scanner, right? So having that capability to deduplication as well, and then after launching that patch management task, then to rescan and ensure that it has been appropriately and properly patched. So now speaking a little bit more at Tanium as a whole, which is a partner of GlideFast, here's kind of a solution alignment chart, which demonstrates how expansive and depth Tanium's ServiceNow platforms are integrated for our joint customers. So I know it's quite a bit here. This is being recorded and will be shared out, so you'll definitely get these so more detailed. But just at a high level, the top three solutions areas for ServiceNow is Tanium's for ITX, SecOps, and IRM, right? So followed by the next row below being ServiceNow platform areas, as a lot of us are familiar with. And then third row being those Tanium integrations available for free at the ServiceNow store, right? So a lot of this coming from Tanium's platform areas and integrations that are native. They can connect to asset, performance, deploy, patch, threat response, comply. Those who very Tanium versed understand. So if you recall in that previous screen, for VR in a patch example, Tanium's vulnerability management syncs data from Tanium's Comply, which is brought to you from ServiceNow's VR solution. A lot of confusion does occur in, well, is Tanium VR or Tanium's Discovery a competitor of ServiceNow's VR or ServiceNow's Discovery? No, it's less of a competitor, more rather a partnership. It's made to really enhance and keep your CMDB healthy. So we're not necessarily replacing a multitude, whether it's any scanner for that matter. We're ingesting and prioritizing based on your risk scores that we've been talking about throughout this webinar, right? Kind of wrapping up with our partnerships on today's webinar is Black Kite. So Black Kite being another partner that very similar and plays really well from the risk side of the house and ServiceNow's third-party risk management solution. So really what they're going to be leveraging is AI-powered parsing and to automatically read, score, and map vendor documents like a SOC report, whether it's one or two, against dozens of compliance frameworks and can connect even further in depth into ServiceNow's IRM application suite. So enabling full program scalability, understanding, monitoring any workflows through the onboarding or offboarding process without adding additional headcount, right? So wanting to qualify any risk of clear decision makings, using accurate tiering for vendors as well for open, fair quantifications, and just proactively, continuously monitoring, right? So all in all, to really enrich your third-party profiles with real-time security posture insights, automating risk and scoring prioritizations, because what have we been talking about all webinar? Just that unification, AI, and being proactive, right? So a couple of our partners there, and I know we've said a lot, joined a lot. Again, this webinar is definitely going to be shared out. Want to discuss more further with you and answer any questions that you might have. How can we make AI a useful tool without introducing new security risks? Eric Jones, I'll pick on you for this one.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we think about is, and it's going to sound a little bit salesy, right? Because hey, let's face it, what are we all here for? A common interest service now in platform. Tool sprawl, it's always been a thing, right? When we consolidate that down into a trusted platform like ServiceNow, we bring a couple of benefits of knowing what that tool is doing, how it's doing it, where is our data. We talk the more technicals of AI, like your LLM data structures, the model underneath it, how we're controlling prompts, all those types of things, right? We talked a little bit about AI Control Tower and getting that visibility in that, but then we also talked about the security tool chain, right? Agentic AI responses, automating response to the event that's occurring, USIM, giving that conversational front. When we bring all those in platform, we maintain singular point of control, and we also know what the platform is doing, right? Outside of that pitch, right, of using it in the same platform and kind of consolidating and unifying. We also have the construct of really nailing in on what John talked about with AI Control Tower, right? The function of being able to catalog your use of AI. And know what those tools are, know if they're approved or not, know if they're doing what they're doing, really brings about a lowered risk, but also an increase in trust of that tool. John, I don't know if you have additional insight right there in terms of bringing that in without the security risk, because the fact of the matter is, right, it's a risk. It's really about controlling and lowering that risk as opposed to not doing it.
Yeah, when you think of being able to monitor the risks of employee displacement, the risk of misinformation, the risks of data privacy leaks, the ability to log the use of and the prompts that are involved, and the agent data kits that you're using inside ServiceNow, basically that's what AI Control Tower is really meant to be used for. The ability to say, yes, we have inside of IRM our acceptable use policy of both internal and external AI agents. The ability to document the risks of data privacy and then monitor how AI agents are being granted access to that internal information, like HR data inside of ServiceNow, or compliance and vulnerability data that could be inadvertently exposed to just normal service desk users who, frankly, don't need and shouldn't have access to that level of security information. That's where AI Control Tower really comes into play.
Beautiful. Okay. And then I'll keep going even more on the question board. Just are there easy ways to get started with AI-driven security tools like ServiceNow without overwhelming our team? And how can we get humans involved and controlled for AI more tasks? So the short answer is that crawl, walk, run. We were all familiar with that. That's still not going anywhere. What we've been talking about even in the beginning is that uh, companies are just getting too excited, right? And kind of jump the gun and keep diving in head first without understanding any of the um, any blowbacks that might happen. Maybe they're opening up access and private data that shouldn't be allowed to everyone on the instance, right? So this is where it comes really in play to kind of wrap that rope around our hearts just jumping at at something. So we want to really keep our brain in control to say, hey, let's think about this strategically. Let's still do an advisory services if need be. Understand who our key players are going to take control of these summarizations that we might need. So that might even help with keeping humans involved in control of what AI is actually handling. The handover report, maybe not every analyst needs to generate that for themselves and start to do that crawl, walk, run, or even stretch prior, right? So just wanted to keep us in control of the AI because humans plus AI is really what's going to make things better together. Don't think we have any other questions there. Again, want to thank everybody for coming and joining today. This will be sent out. And any follow-up webinars will be posted on our social media site on LinkedIn.
Looks like we have one late entry to our questions there, David.
Okay. Is there any documentation that can help explain why ServiceNow with AI is better in SOAR Plus than any specific tools like Splunk and CrowdStrike? So Eric Jones might throw this over to you as far as what you think, because I know you played with Splunk before.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, from a documentation, right? So elevator pitch white paper type of perspective, ServiceNow does have some out there, right? But rather than making that a sales pitch, what I can say directly to that question is, um, when we talk about the use of AI, the question that we asked earlier of how do we introduce AI without introducing risk, and I mentioned bringing that in platform. It's the same perspective here. Um, what is ServiceNow holistically good at? Workflow, managing life cycle of things occurring in your enterprise, whether that's incident, security incident, vulnerability response and mitigation management, risk cataloging it, controlling it, right? When we look at that and we look at what ServiceNow is really keyed in as a platform to do, it's business intelligence and it's business lifecycle. And so the benefit here, right, is that a lot of those other tools aren't as stitched inward. Does that other tool, and I know the question mentioned something like a Splunk or a CrowdStrike, tool abound, right? Does it have asset? information that's the non-technical, non-discoverable type of asset. What business services are running on that application? What are some of those additional non-technical attributes of your business environment that we benefit from having in a singular platform? And then we sort of skin the AI function on top of that, right? And that's really where the business light comes in. Having that almost singular data view where we can then control our AI use cases, but control them in a manner that we're allowing those functions, AI agents and such, to very quickly, right, at a computational power instead of a human thought power, gather all of that data up and present it to a user to say, here's all of the factors, instead of alt tabbing between all of those tools that we have that do that singular focus function. So it really is about unified, right? We talked about unified security in this webinar, right? But it's really about that unified endpoint of interaction that we really talk about that benefit. Outside of a webinar like this today, right? That is definitely something that we offer in terms of coming in and doing a business process evaluation that then helps you see that benefit, as opposed to, hey, I can go Google and find you a bunch of white papers, right? It's really about looking at that business process and folding that into what ServiceNow does so well.
Big thank you. And if there are no other questions, I believe we can wrap this up, and follow-up emails will be sent out. All righty. Thanks, everybody.